Well, hello again. This is John Hauser from my YouTube channel, Free Advice. I'm here to read you the new the news. Not really. I have seen recently this question about in retirement owning your house or renting a house or renting an apartment. So I wanted to address it. Address this issue. I will tell you what works for us right now, owning or renting, and what works for a lot of people that I know. And I know a lot of people. I really do know a lot of people. See, that's the downside of being world famous. When you're world famous, you know a lot of people, and everywhere you go, people are saying hello to you. I'm driving through the intersection, people start honking their horns and saying things to me and yelling, and I realize they just recognize me. So I get a lot of beeps throughout the day if I'm out driving around. So it's just people that know me. Anyhow, to get to the actual subject at hand, and the subject at hand is pros and cons of renting a residence or owning a residence in retirement. Okay, I'm going to tell you what works for me. My wife and I, we were long-term thinkers, so the last house that we bought, we lived in Raleigh, North Carolina. We had a nice big house there. And we bought that house and we had a 30-year mortgage, but we paid the house off in 17 years. So then we had 100% equity built up in that house. When it came time to retire, we were able to sell that house and turn around and buy a house that was better suited to us and pay cash. In other words, we used the one payment method, just one payment. So in my opinion, I'm going to tell you right up front, in my opinion, if you are retired and if your house is paid for and if your house is in reasonably good shape, stay there as long as you can. That's just my opinion. Now, on the other side, there's this issue of renting. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I know about renting, because a lot of times people say, well, if you rent, you don't have to pay property taxes. Well, that's not true. The property taxes are built into your rent. They also say, well, if you rent, you don't have to worry about maintenance. That's not true either. The cost of what you're paying to rent that house or apartment has money built into it to pay for repairs. That's right, it does. Whether you know it or not, when you're renting, you are paying property taxes and you're paying for repairs. Now, let me give you some examples. Let's say that your rent is $1,200 a month. $1,200 a month. That's $14,000 a year that you're paying in rent. $14,000 a year in rent. When my wife and I bought our house in Raleigh, now of course that was several years ago, but our house payment was only about $1,000 a month. And yes, we bought it a long time ago. But as we were paying for the house, I knew people that were renting something similar or something smaller or an apartment. They were paying $1,200, $1,400, $1,500 a month for rent. To me, that was not a good decision. Put that in perspective, right now in Raleigh, North Carolina, you will be hard-pressed to find a decent living space, whether it's a house or apartment, for less than $2,000 a month. Very difficult to find in Raleigh. Now, other cities may be different, but in Raleigh, we don't live in Raleigh anymore. But those a few years ago, to find a place to rent for less than $2,000 a month was unbelievably hard. Now, what does that equate to? Well, $2,000 a month is $24,000 per year. And that's $24,000 out the window. You never see it again. If you have a home and you're making house payments, and yes, you've got repairs that occasionally come along. But at least you're building equity. You can turn around and sell that house and get your money back. Now, if you're in a situation like myself or a lot of other people I know, that your house is paid for, you're sitting on 100% equity. Think about that. If you live in a house that's $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, you're sitting on equity that eventually could be sold, and that equity could be used for who knows whatever. I mean, if nothing else, it could be an inheritance for your children. But again, this all depends on your financial situation. If renting is the main option for you, then rent. But for my wife and I, we always believed that buying a home was the best way to go because we eventually wanted to have a very economical lifestyle and we wanted to be totally debt free. I also know some people who are paying right now, who are paying almost $3,000 a month for rent. Now think of that, $3,000 a month for rent. And these are some people I know pretty well, and they've said to me, oh, well, we don't have to pay property taxes. I'm like, duh, you're paying property taxes on that house. You just don't realize it. We don't have to pay for repairs. You are paying for repairs. If the owner of that rental property is making a profit, you are paying for the property taxes and you are paying for the repairs, and you are sitting there paying for that new roof and you don't even know it. $3,000 a month. What's that equate to? $36,000 a year. In 10 years, you would have bought a $360,000 house, and it would be 100% paid for, and you'd be totally in the clear. You'd have a house that's paid for. So think about it. Does it make more sense to own than to rent? Now, there is some downsides, obviously, to owning a house and owning property. But I'm going to talk about a few of those too. But first, let me kind of go through this a little bit. Here's the pros. Here's the pro. I'll give you the con, then the pro. Or I could be a pro-con. I'm not going to try and con you into being a pro. The pro is the house is paid for. When my wife and I get up every morning, we look around and we're like, it's our house is paid for. It's paid for. Okay. You want to have home insurance, obviously, on your house. And yes, you'll have to pay the annual home insurance. But if you're renting, you're paying for that insurance, plus if you have renter's insurance. So you're going to pay insurance either way you go. You got to look at these things. Now, I also hear this complaint, property taxes. I had one of my relatives recently say to me, oh yeah, your house is paid for, but you still have to pay property taxes. I'm like, duh. You're renting. You are paying property taxes. You just don't realize it. That's why your rent is so high, because the person that rents the house to you has got to cover all those costs. And one of those costs is homeowner's insurance, property tax, and annual repairs. It's all figured into the cost of your rent. So you're paying it whether you realize it or not. And I know that some people say, well, if I rent, it's low stress. Okay, if the stress is the issue, then go ahead and rent if you want to be totally stress-free. But where am I going to park my 3 cars if I rent an apartment? Then I've got stress there. Or if I have to walk up 3 flights of steps to get to the apartment, there's the stress, although I'd probably be healthier. What I'm trying to say is there's good and there's bad. There's something to consider on each side. But my personal opinion is that if you have your house paid for, if you're retired, and if you have your house paid for, and if you're in relatively good health, continue to live there as long as possible. In my opinion, your expenses will be lower if your house is paid for, and you can live there rent-free. Oh, that was a good one to say, rent-free. Okay, let's talk about repairs. So last year we did have some major repairs. Last year, in about this time last year, in March of last year, we had a giant tree that came down in our backyard and did a tremendous amount of damage. And the repairs went on for a couple of months to get everything repaired, get everything put back to where it was, and to do the things that we had to do. I won't go into that much detail, but it was very, very stressful. But we had homeowners insurance, and I was only out of pocket a little bit. Matter of fact, I'm not even sure if I was out of pocket any time it was all said and done. Homeowners insurance. So if you own a house, you want to have homeowners insurance on that house. So if some catastrophe like a tree falling or a tornado or something like that comes along, that you're covered. If you live in an area that's prone to flood, have flood insurance. But if you're not in one of those areas and you don't need flood insurance, don't buy it. Okay, you got to think these things through and figure out what's best for you. Now, my wife and I are both age 75, soon to be 76. Now, obviously, there will eventually come a time when, we may not be able to take care of a house this big, and we may have to downsize and go to an apartment or a rest home or a graveyard. Oops. Eventually things can change. But if you're in good health and if you own your house, why not stay there as long as possible? All right, let's see here. What else we got? Oh, somebody on one of these videos said, well, if the water heater breaks, it's up to you to fix it. Okay. Our water heater did break, and I did pay to fix it, and it was $1,100 to have a new water heater installed. $1,100. And that water heater, and the new water heater is probably good for 10 years. $1,100. One time I spent that year. Compare that to paying $1,200 a month in rent, which is $14,000. So you're going to tell me that it's cheaper to pay $14,000 a year in rent than to buy one $1,100 water heater? That's a $13,000 difference that I get to keep. Or how about my friends that are paying $3,000 a month rent? They have a nice house, but they're paying $3,000 a month rent. $36,000 a year. I take the $1,100 water heater out of that, I still am getting to keep $34,000 a year. And I really like to keep money. I'm kind of a tightwad. So this issue of renting versus owning is going to depend a lot on you and your financial situation and the way you've planned as you went through your life. Our plan was that when we retired was to have a house on one level. We had a house before that was a tri-level, had a lot of square footage, but had a lot of steps. Our plan was to get into a house on one level. And for us, this is what works. Having a house on one level and having a house that's paid for, and it has a modest sized lot, which does require cutting the grass, which I currently still do. But if I had to hire somebody to do it, it wouldn't be that expensive. I could afford to have it done. Okay, here's another one, air conditioning repairs. And yes, after we bought this house, we had to do air conditioning repairs. Now, your typical air conditioner, after it's repaired, or replaced rather, we had to replace it, is good from 10 to 20 years with proper servicing. Again, one time to have that air conditioner replaced as opposed to $30,000 a year in rent. Think about it. It's not even a logical question to ask, which is cheaper. Having a one-level house has helped us out a lot. Independent living. Now, when my wife and I first got married many, many years ago, we lived in an apartment. Matter of fact, we had 3 apartments in our marriage in the time that we've been married. And in all 3 cases, we did not enjoy apartment living. We did not enjoy sharing a building with somebody else. In apartment living, there's generally the issue of noise or lack of parking. For us, this space works good because we happen to have 3 cars. And 3 cars is probably one too many, but one of those hardly ever gets driven. But that's us. We have possessions. Some people have boats. Some people have toys in the backyard for their grandkids. It's a matter of preference. But for us, a house that's level and a house that has a level lot works out really good, and we have no house payment. And here's what we do. Each month out of our budget, we set money aside for household repairs, and we set money aside for property taxes. So that when the property taxes roll around, we simply write a check and pay them, and it's done for. Now, I live in North Carolina. My brother lives in Florida, and something is happening there with property taxes. My brother told me recently that because he is over age 65, his property taxes in Florida are going to go way down. So that's probably one of the reasons why a lot of people are moving to Florida. All right, let me see if there's anything else. Oh, independent living. Here's where I was headed with this. We like having our own place. We like not having to share parking spaces. We like having our own place, and we like the distance between the houses so that you have that certain amount of privacy. Okay, let's see. Yard work. If I'm unable to, I may eventually have to hire somebody to do yard work. We live in a quiet neighborhood. That's very important when you're buying a house. And space. In our house, we still have room to entertain between 12 to 15 people at once. If we have a dinner party, we still have room to do that. And we're still into that level of where we like to entertain. So from my point of view, if you can buy a house, you're going to retire, if you can buy a house and have that house paid for, and if that house has most of what you want in your house, and if it can suit your needs, and if you're in relatively good health, that you can take care of that house, in my opinion, having a house that's paid for with no house payment is a smart move. Now, the downside is if you're a person that likes to move around a lot, let's say you like to move from city to city, every couple of years, then obviously renting would be a better alternative because you want to go for a short-term location. Or you can do like some other people I know. They will go into an area, buy a house for a year or two, stay there for 2 or 3 years, build up equity, sell the house and take the profit and put it into another. It's all what your preference is. But look at your budget, make sure you have a written budget, look at your budget, make sure you have a written budget, and think it through. What's better for you, to rent or to own? In my case, I believe at this time in our life, 75 and a half, that owning is still the best way to go. And I know several people that are much older than we are. They're in their 80s and even in their 90s, and they're still in the house that they bought and paid for. But again, everybody's needs are different. Everybody's preferences are different, so think it through as for what is good for you. But one more time, let me review this. If you're paying $2,000 a month in rent, that's $24,000 a year. Whereas my wife and I have our house paid for, all we have to do is pay for our property taxes, our home insurance, and the occasional repair. And trust me, it's not that much money. It's actually very easy to manage. This is John Hauser with my channel, Free Advice, asking, is it better for you to rent or to buy? To rent or to own? Is it better to rent a house or an apartment or to own your own house and own it outright with no house payment? Please like and subscribe, and please put your comments in the area below. Love to hear from you. This is John Hauser from my website, which is Free Advice and the Grumpy Old Toad. I'm not really that grumpy.